feel it sort of ripple through my body, and I would feel that my nerves were still frayed. I kept hearing them like phantom horns. I kept hearing them in my head.
That's not anything to do with national security. I did not expect that. I did not expect the hearing to be what it was.
Mission Hydra. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it does.
Tell us what that means.
I wasn't familiar with what a Hydra was. I guess it's a mythological Greek figure. But he spoke about it, this thing having many heads. And so, we needed to, as I wrote here, cut off and cauterize the head. So as we were able to take control of a situation, then we held that position.
We were getting information that PLT were in a tent drinking coffee and not out engaging with protesters, trying to have an understanding their intentions, whether or not there was any room to negotiate to maybe move or leave the area. They were sitting in a tent drinking coffee.
You had set up, from my review of the records, an empty gymnasium of some kind to take children to, and then the plan was to give them back to their parents. So is it fair to say that when you use the phrase violence, you're not actually describing any form of physical assaults, are you?
Well, physical assaults do contribute to what I'm describing. I was specifically describing the violence that our community felt as a result of the culmination of actions that the occupiers engaged in.
So the violence that they felt, not actual violence, is that what you're saying?
That is correct. Not the criminal code definition of violence, but the violence that they felt by having incessant horns blared.
Right. And
by having trucks run 24/7 a day.
Right.
By having people intimidate them and follow them, and by having people rip masks off their head, by feeling sheltered in their homes.
Well, thank you. I understand what you mean, but you're not talking about violence under Section 2 of the CSIS Act, are you?
No, I'm not.
It was really not going well. I was getting lots of reports from my members of the NCRCC. There was lots of dysfunctions, still lots of yelling, lots of unknowns of what they were going to do. On the 31st of January, I had a conversation with Deputy Bell where he basically said, we're planning for a protracted event and we really don't know our way out of this.
Essentially, in summary, that there was no intelligence of a credible threat under Section 2 of the CSIS Act. Would you agree with that?
There was no intelligence of...
There was no credible intelligence.
There was no credible intelligence of a threat.
Yes.
That I would agree with that.
Right. There was never a declaration, of course, as a riot, and there was no formal declaration that there was an unlawful assembly. And therefore, the protesters who were there, who were sitting there, no one in authority, it's fair to say, told them that they were doing anything illegal. Is that fair?
Again, I will cede to the legal definition of it.
I'm heading out on this traveler's road, and I won't find peace till the day we rest in harmony. Tell me what's so wrong if I choose to disagree. We're taking Highway 1 till we're living free. Fighting till we're living free. Oh, standing in unity.
Before they arrived on the 28th, we had no experience, and all of the experience as they moved across was that they were lawful and that they indicated they were coming to lawfully protest in Ottawa. That experience package changed for us on the 28th.
Steve Bell was the interim chief of police at the time of after the Emergencies Act was invoked and when the police were violently pushing and beating and charging and assaulting the civilians in Ottawa.
If you are involved in this protest, we will actively look to identify you and follow up with financial sanctions and criminal charges. Absolutely. This investigation will go on for months to come.
Hendon report was mentioned. And there's a lot to say about what was learned in the first couple of weeks from the City of Ottawa, the Ottawa City Police, and the Ontario Provincial Police. There was a lot of miscommunication. That was very clear.
No, that's why I was quite confused. I was in my command post watching the news and I saw Chief Slowly and Deputy Bell on the TV announcing this, and it caused me great concern. I had two issues. Number one, I currently did not have the capacity to do what I was hearing I wanted to be done in relation to OPP police highways. And I also questioned the intelligence. So I guess three things. And I questioned, how would that help?
A lot of information was not being shared or not being received, and a lot of fingers were pointed everywhere.
So Project Hendon was started by Deputy Commissioner Morris. It is essentially extremism monitoring online project. It's very important in my view.
And through their obvious intelligence gathering through that process and interactions with people involved in the convoy and participating in it, they reached the conclusion that these people were here to stay for a considerable period of time.
Is it fair to say that at no point during the convoy protest did you receive reliable intelligence that would lead you to conclude that there was a risk to national security that would rise above the potential threat to national security that you identified in that report?
That's correct.
And remarkably, Interim Chief Bell never read that report.
The professionalism and the attempts that they had made to make this work should be commended. Like they tried. They put forward Inspector Bedouin. You know, his plan would have worked had they done that in the first place. I understand this is an email from the Deputy Minister of Public Safety, Rob Stewart, to you, right?
Yes.
Okay, and in the third sentence on the top paragraph, it says, "We have a big meeting this afternoon where this will be discussed, so I really need your input," right?
Yes.
All right. Did you know that that meeting was at 3:30 p.m. and that it was with Cabinet and it was the incident response group of the political executive meeting and that your proposal was provided to them?
No.
Okay. It was. I can tell you that. And then they invoked the Emergencies Act. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
The whole thing was more set up, the commission, to have a whole bunch of infighting between non-federal actors about who's to blame, as opposed to the actual true statutory mandate that Parliament has given, which was look at the background and reasons it was invoked.
Lost confidence is a harsh and strong way of putting it. This is a police service that is in a very unenviable position, is struggling to move forward with an operational plan.
I'm just trying to understand, isn't that another way of saying you had lost confidence in the OPS's ability? I mean, you wanted to be asked to step in and take over.
It may be semantics. They needed our assistance at that point in time. There was no question about it. They absolutely, in my opinion, needed our assistance to succeed.
Between you and I only, GOC losing/lost confidence in OPS, we got to get to safe action/enforcement, because if they go to the Emergency Measures Act, you or, it's supposed to be I assume, you or I may be brought in to lead, not something I want.
It was disrespectful in terms of we're there to help, and he's just not trusting it. It was very clear he had confidence issues in what we were there to do.
Oh, I'm asking you though, because you've had a lot of dealings with Chief Slowly. So why, in your opinion and in your experience, do you believe Chief Slowly would have refused to consider or would not have entertained the possibility of asking for formal assistance in that way.
I don't believe he wanted to give up control. I think he felt that he was the chief in the police of jurisdiction, and he wanted that to be maintained.
Just the whole process that the commission and their staff lawyers used for figuring out who was going to testify, what groups were going to testify, the sequencing, and the amount of time. And there was only one witness that was put up for 2 full days. Only one. And that was former Chief Slowly.
No, they're federal representatives here, but the trauma impacted on federal employees, elected officials, public officials, the entire infrastructure and ecosystem that represents our nation's capital, the parliamentary district. And I believe Mr. Champ quoted 18 or 15,000 residents in that area. I don't know how many businesses. I know the Rideau Center was closed. All of that happened literally within hours. And the relief did not come, I believe, until February 17th, 18th, or 19th.
And it seemed the way a lot of the other parties, particularly the federal government, and to some extent the provincial government, but it was more clearly articulated from witnesses from the federal government, that he was going to be the fall guy.
And he resigned the day that the Emergencies Act was invoked. It looked like that was going to happen already, but by chance, the resignation came the same day that the Emergencies Act was invoked. And I think that he was like an innocent party in all of that mismanagement I mentioned. Like I said earlier, too, when politicians are stroking the flames of an issue, it doesn't help the police, and he was very adamant about that.
I think I've given this testimony in parliamentary standing committees. The level of disinformation and misinformation was off the charts. It was crushing to the members' morale. It was crushing to the incident command team's morale. It was crushing to my executive team's morale. I suspect it was crushing to the board. It was crushing to everybody.
It's absolutely clear that the politicians were putting pressure on the police to act, particularly those in government, in the federal government, the Liberal government. They wanted these pesky protesters gone, and they didn't care what level of force was used or what cost was involved. They just wanted it gone. It was becoming an embarrassment for the Prime Minister and his image, both in Canada and around the world.
There was no national emergency, but it's hilarious. If that was happening in Winnipeg or in Edmonton, the feds never would have gotten involved, but it was on the home ice. They were ticked. It was their town, and based on everything, I think they were just annoyed. And so in order to deal with that annoyance, they invoked a national emergency. And painted it like it was some form of, radical bunch of terrorists or something like that. It was crazy.
We are peaceful.
I said, if you and me, lawyer to lawyer, were in the middle of that protest, walking along the sidewalk in Wellington, with or without a sign, I think you and I as lawyers would have immediately concluded that we were not engaged in illegal activity. We were participating in a lawful protest.
The police came straight to me and he targeted me and he took his gun of tear gas and he actually shot me directly in my legs. here is a peaceful protest, and the only violence that I saw so far is not coming from this side, it's coming from the other side.
Yeah, useful but not necessary. We were moving in there regardless, but the Emergencies Act was helpful.
I think it was beneficial. Beneficial, but not necessary. Correct.
The testimony is clear from every police representative that none of them made a request for the Emergencies Act, not one.
The Emergency Act created a very stable platform, a stable environment for us to execute our plan.
But last question, just because I just want to get this clear. But so you're saying that there was existing laws that you could have done the same thing under, is that right?
We had a plan. We were going to execute a plan.
Thank you.
I don't agree that it was inevitable. Absolutely disagree with that for many reasons. One is that there was the agreement with the mayor to reduce the footprint, because yes, everybody agreed and acknowledged that the effect of the protest was not to cause any harms on Ottawa city residents, and people agreed to move to Wellington Street. So there was that. Another thing was that the federal government could have talked to the protesters or even Ontario. And what I learned at the inquiry was what happened at Windsor is the province talked to the protesters together with the police, and together they came to a resolution and negotiation. They moved the protest away. The same actually happened in Coutts, but with a little bit more criminal charges for criminal type activity, and that's how it was dealt with. So there's 3 different scenarios you could have used in Ottawa that, how I would look at it is that means that it was not inevitable. There were many options that could have been taken because in fact, they were taken in the other situations in Canada.
One of the things that surprised me about the evidence from all the various police officials was the extent to which they were encouraging and supportive of direct dialogue from officials in the federal government. Didn't have to be the Prime Minister, could be at a deputy minister level or a ministerial level, to have a dialogue and to hear out the Freedom Convoy truckers and why they had come to Ottawa in a cold winter conditions and why thousands and thousands of Canadians lined the highways to greet them. So it was remarkable to me how open and concerned the police officials were about having clarity in their mind that the right course forward was to open up dialogue, and how the Prime Minister and his cabinet would have none of it. There was no way they wanted to talk to these Canadians at all.
And I saw little children holding signs saying, "Thank you for giving me back my future."
Tamara finally had a chance to speak at the inquiry because she hasn't been able to publicly talk because of the insane bail conditions that have been imposed on her for her alleged, what is it even called? Mischief.
I'm heading out on this traveler's road, leaving all behind to revive my soul. And I won't find peace till the day we rest in harmony. They tell me I'm the one to blame, so they cast the stones and put me to shame. Damn your lies, you are a master in disguise. Tell me what's so wrong if I choose to disagree. We're taking Highway 1 just a sin.